The Russian Federation will hold a referenda in the occupied, liberated, potato. Okay, in the areas of Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia. Does that mean that this was the core territory that Russia wanted to annex? Great question. So let's take a look at the map, because the map is our best friend. We love the map on this channel. Where's the map? Where is the map? Here is the map. Right. So let's take a look at the territories that have either been occupied or liberated, depending on whom you ask. So we have Ukraine over here, which will soon, I don't know, be called with another name. I don't know. So you have Luhansk. Do you see where Luhansk is? This here is Luhansk. It's a city and it's also an oblast, which is you could call it a province or a state. Then you have Donetsk, which is over here. So this is the Donbas region essentially, right? Then you have the let's zoom in a little bit more. You have come on, zoom. Okay, here we are. You have Kherson, which is north of the Crimea Peninsula, which is already under Russian control, and then you have Zaporizhia, which is over here, which is further northeast of Kherson and west of Donetsk, right? So this is the overall region that Russia controls more or less right now. They also control the Crimea Peninsula, yes, and they also hold Kherson. So they will be now. They may be in the process of doing it right now, holding referendums or referenda in this region, and that is obviously the prelude to an official reintegration of these territories with the Republic of Russia, or you could call it annexation. You could call it whatever you want to call it, right? So all these parts of Ukraine will now sooner or later become officially Russian territory. So the map in Google will not change because the Americans won't allow that, but that's how it's going to be. That's what the ground realities are going to reflect. So what does this mean? Does it mean that this was the core territory the Russians wanted to annex? The Russians obviously wanted to annex this territory first because that's where most of these regions have Russian majority. People who speak Russian as opposed to Ukrainian. People who identify as Russians as opposed to Ukrainians, right? So yes, the Russians did want to uh, annex or reintegrate these territories with the Russian nation. So that's, I think, the first objective. Yeah. So they're gonna soon most likely achieve this. They're gonna. Some people will call it a sham election, sham referendum. It doesn't matter. The Russians have boots on the ground. They control these territories. Now they will go through this process, and that will lead to the integration of these territories with Russia. I'm not sure if it is the only objective of the Ukraine war, of the special operation that Russia has done in Ukraine. I think the actual long-term objective is to once and for all end the threat that Ukraine poses to Russia. Ukraine had the largest land army in Europe apart from the Russian army. Their army was stronger than the armies of France and Germany put together. They had an enormous tank force, which is now gone, right? Their tank force has been decimated. The Americans are now pushing in second-hand T-72 tanks into Ukraine because all the Ukrainian tanks have been destroyed, and even those U.S. given T-72 tanks are also mostly gone now, and therefore now they are being forced to donate older tanks like T-52 or whatever tanks to the Ukrainians. Those will also be soon gone. So the Russians are slowly but steadily ending, destroying, annihilating the Ukrainian war machine. It's going to be neutralized once and for all. And if there is an escalation, the Russians can totally devastate Ukraine. Till today, they have not even used the air force. You don't understand how potent the Russian military is. Yes, they are right now mobilizing some reservists or conscripts or whatever, which is great. It doesn't mean that the Russians are desperate. They are mobilizing trained forces, trained soldiers or semi-trained soldiers who will be inducted rapidly into the Russian military. Most of these will come in from the from which region of Russia? The Caucasus region of Russia, uh, the Dagestan region, and what's the other place called? The Dagestan region and the Crimean. Sorry, the Caucasus region of Russia. So that's what they're doing, and they will be able to raise I don't know, roughly 500,000 strong new forces, right? So they are not desperate. They are doing things systematically in a planned manner. I'm sure this is something they are also planned. So I think the Russian long-term objective is to neutralize completely the Ukrainian fighting machine, the Ukrainian war machine, the Ukrainian military. The Americans are pushing in arms and ammunition. They are pushing in older and older tanks now because they have run out of tanks to give the Ukrainians, unless they start giving them American tanks, which will be a significant escalation. It won't go down with Russia, and that will lead to consequences and repercussions. So the Ukrainian military is being slowly eroded and decimated. It will, I don't know, in some time, mathematically speaking, it will cease to exist as a fighting force. The Americans are providing them with various missiles and things. How long does that last? The Russians have clearly been planning for this war for a decade or more. It must have been in the plans for much longer than that. Maybe ever since Mr. Putin came to power, right? So that's what's happening currently in Ukraine. You see all kinds of reports in the Western media that the Russians are losing. They have been saying this from day one. Look at the maps. Look at where the referendums are happening. You can see that tells you what territories the Russians control. They control at least 1/4 of Ukraine. Some battles happen. Some territories gained and lost. It's like chess moves. Yeah. Look at the overall chess game from start to end. Whenever it ends, don't look at individual chess moves. You may make a big sacrifice in chess, a queen sacrifice. It looks like a disaster, but that actually sometimes helps you, if you know what you're doing, to win the chess game. So this is a long term chess game. These moves are done, tactical moves are done. It doesn't mean anything in the long run, or may mean something in the long run. So that's what's happening in Ukraine. And we will, on this channel, in this program, we're going to keep a long term eye on the Ukraine conflict, and we're going to keep on speaking about this periodically as and when something of importance, something of import happens. All right. So that's where we are as of today, my dear friends.